Hello everybody, my name is Raxef, and I hope you are all enjoying Legion patch 7.3 as much as I am. In the past few weeks we've been given a ton of content, and in today's video I want to discuss what I've been liking, what I think could have used some improvement, and ultimately where I see us going in the future. So with that said, let's jump into the video. To begin with, I want to discuss the three zones that we travel through on Argus, which are Krokuun, Makari, and the Antoran Wastes. Now overall, I do like these zones. I think that they are paced very proportionally to our experience in Argus. Krokuun starts off as a pretty simply laid out area, not a ton going on there in terms of enemies, and you can get to where you want to go with relative ease. Makari steps it up a bit more with the enemies and the terrain, and then the Antoran Wastes is almost like a maze. I mean, Antoran Wastes is kind of like the smallest area, but with how it's laid out, all the jagged ridges on the mountainsides and the plethora of enemies that are pretty much always going to be coming after you, it can be quite a pain to navigate through the Antoran Wastes. And I think that the scaling from easiest to hardest is very good. I do think the development team did a great job on these three zones as well. I think that they each feel different from each other while all feeling like they are part of the same planet. Of course, Makari feels the most different since it has been physically separated from Argus, but it's also the most beautiful. It has some really great architecture in comparison to, say, the Antoran Waste, which does have some cool architecture. It's pretty much just a dead, barren black rock with a lot of green fire, so that's not quite so beautiful. And I wouldn't really say that any of the zones are the most beautiful zones that we've seen, not even in Legion, far from it in fact, but they are really great in establishing a story and telling the events of what has happened to this poor broken planet and giving us some insight and some backstory as to what sort of world the Draenei came from before they became the Draenei. So overall, I do like these three zones. I think that there's a ton to do in each of them. I do wish that they were maybe a little bit larger, but I can kind of forgive Blizzard, given how we have so much content presented to us in patch 7.3, and the zones do feel big enough, even if it's really just the design of them that gives it the sense of scale. Next up, I want to discuss the storyline and questing that we've been experiencing so far. Overall, I'm really enjoying the storyline. I think the pacing has been going along pretty well in terms of us just starting out at the bottom with virtually nothing to combat the Legion, and now we've upgraded our ship, we have some really great allies at our side, and it's becoming more and more apparent that we are posing an actual threat to the Legion. On top of that specifically, I've been loving the various types of cutscenes that we're getting all throughout Argus. This was made really apparent to me when I was running through the seat of the Triumvirate the other day with some guildmates who aren't really as into reading a lot of the quest text as I am, which does contain a fair amount of lore. So these guys that I'm with aren't really big lore junkies like myself, but when they saw a specific cutscene that happens at the end of the seat of the Triumvirate, they were just absolutely blown away by it. They couldn't believe that the story had taken this particular turn, and they were all talking about what it could possibly mean for future expansions. So overall, I'm just very happy that these cutscenes are bringing more and more players into the lore of Warcraft, and it's getting them interested, because not everyone is going to be reading the quest text like I'm going to be. Some people either don't have time for it, or they're just not interested in doing all of that reading, and I think these cutscenes are a really great way for Blizzard to reach out to those other players who want to experience the story, just not necessarily through text format. And I think Blizzard's doing a really great job of it so far, and I think they're going to continue doing a great job of it in the future. And of course, we've been introduced to some new and unfamiliar characters as well. You know, like I mentioned, we learned a bit more about Velen and Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, but now we also get to experience the story alongside Turellian and Aurelia, and there's some really great future storylines that I'm looking forward to, particularly between Aurelia and Turellian. If you've played through this most recent week of patch 7.3, then I think you know what I'm alluding to, and you get some more backstory on a couple of the different members of the Army of the Light. You know, I'm really hoping we get some more story with Lithraxian. He's a character that I really want to know more about. I was kind of viewing him as potentially what Illidan could become or could surpass. You know, Illidan is this corrupted being, and Zera wanted to make him holy and pure, and I would assume that Lothraxion was a Dreadlord until Zera or some other Naru purified him and made him a soldier of the Army of the Light. At least that's what I think happened. But I would like to learn more a bit about Lothraxion. But even, you know, some of the characters that we have never heard of before, you know, a couple of the people who've allied themselves with the Void. I'm not going to go too into that story because it will get into a little bit of spoilers. But for instance, the Locus Walker, you know, I really want to learn more about him and what his motivations are, why he's with a certain someone, and what exactly his goal here is in the long run. I think that how these new characters and the characters that we're learning a bit more about, how they relate to each other, is going to ultimately provide us with a much more interesting and colorful story as we progress through Legion. In terms of the storyline as a whole, there is one negative thing that I wanted to touch on, and that is the concept of time gating. Now, for a hardcore player like myself who completes all of the storyline quests in a single day, even though I had plenty of content to do for the rest of the week, I didn't like the fact that I just had to wait around for a day to come along before I could progress in the story. What I would have much rather have liked to have seen is a resource-based system, particularly since we're coming here to a new planet and we're trying to bolster our forces in order to eventually take on the Legion. It would feel much better to me as a player in a group of players that we are all working together to harvest resources and contribute them to strengthen our ranks, to make armor and make weapons so that we can take on the Legion. I would much rather have it be soft time-gated, where we need to reach a certain level of resources, but we can't unlock it, say, until 3 days have passed since the Tuesday update. I think that would be a good medium between time gating and being solely resource dependent. I don't know if it's something that Blizzard will really ever do in the future, but it is something I hope they consider, because I like that model much more than just getting everything done and then having to wait for 6 days doing other kinds of content before the time just arbitrarily passes and, oh, hey, now we can do these things since a week has passed. The next topic I want to touch on concerns world quests and invasion portals. Now, overall, world quests feel pretty much the same that they do on the Broken Isles. The only difference with the Argus world quests is that they spawn a lot quicker. I believe that they're on a 12-hour timer instead of a 24-hour timer. So if you are really interested in grinding your Army of the Light rep as fast as you possibly could, maybe you wanted to get that Veiled Argonite from as many sources as possible, you'd be able to log on both in the morning and in the evening, and you'd have new world quests available at both times to satisfy all of your grinding needs. But other than that, these world quests don't really feel revolutionary or like you're actually making a huge difference in the fight on Argus. They're just okay. Of course, we also have invasion portals, which are functioning as sort of a pseudo-world quest. Now, I really like this system, A, because you get decent rewards for repeatable content if you're looking to farm up your Argonite or artifact power, but also just the fact that we're able to visit all these different worlds, it gives the player a greater sense of scale within the Warcraft universe. Previously, we're just focused on Azeroth or just Draenor or Outland. Now we really realize that the Legion is present throughout most of the universe, and we're pretty much the only ones who can stop them. So I'm hoping maybe in a nearby expansion we can expand further upon these alien worlds. I think that would be really, really cool. The only thing that I'm not too happy about is that with these invasion portals, you're not getting really any rep for the Army of the Light or for Argusian Reach. You know, for as repeatable as they are, and you know, we're going there on behalf of the Army of the Light, I think it would have been okay if Blizzard gave us 50 or 75 rep for each completed portal. I think that would have been a good number. I don't really feel like it would make a big difference, but I don't think it was the right move to just not give us any reputation whatsoever by completing a portal. As of this week, we've also been able to explore the new dungeon, the Seat of the Triumvirate, and I've had a chance to go through on several different difficulty modes and really get a sense of what the dungeon is like. Overall, I really have been enjoying it. I love that it's in an outdoors area that you'd normally be questing in anyways. Once you get a sense of your bearings, then the whole outdoorsiness becomes a little less overbearing. I would say that that's the only issue that I really had, particularly on my first or second playthrough of it, is that it was kind of a bit overwhelming just being in an outdoors area. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it was a bit of an easier type of dungeon. Even on Mythic difficulty and Mythic Plus, I didn't have any trouble getting through it. And given that I am decently geared, I wouldn't expect to have any trouble. So for those types of people who are really interested in pushing their Mythic keys, I would say that the Seat of the Triumvirate, being a mid-length to short-length dungeon, will be very popular for Mythic Plus and for dungeon goers in general. And lastly, we have the Netherlight Crucible. Now, I did touch on this topic in a bit more detail in a past video, so I'll talk about it briefly here. Overall, I've been really enjoying the Netherlight Crucible. I think the little added touch of character customization is really great for the game. I want much more of it in future expansions, and I don't think that the randomness that comes with the randomly generated relic trees is that bad really at all. Of course, if you're a min-maxer, you're a high-end, hardcore Mythic Raider, you're going to want to pay more attention to those kinds of relic trees, but for the most of the player base, it's just a nice thing to have. It gives you some simple character customization, and like I mentioned, I really wish that we could put more of that back into the game. Maybe a bit less randomness would be nice, but overall, I really like this system, and I want Blizzard to keep on implementing systems like this. Overall, I've been really enjoying patch 7.3, and I hope you have been as well. There aren't really a ton of issues that I have with it. The largest of those, I would say, is the time gating, but really, this has been a pretty solid patch. It's not the best that I've seen by far, and we still have Antoran coming out, which is going to be a large indicator as to exactly how good this patch is, but so far, I've been pretty happy. And that's going to do it for today's video. If you liked it, then of course, give it a thumbs up. If you have anything to say, if you didn't like one of the systems that I talked about, or you wish Blizzard had implemented something else, then of course, leave me a comment in the description down below. And if you like my channel, you want to keep up to date with the videos that I'm making, then of course, feel free to subscribe. With that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next video. See you later!